Hey guys, David Wills here with TED-IELTS.com. Today I'm working on an article for you about how to write an IELTS essay. This is going to cover everything there is to know about answering IELTS writing task 2. And in order to finish this article, I would like to show you how I would write the perfect essay, or at least to write a Band 9 essay. So we're going to look at my screen here and we're going to examine a question, and then I'm going to write an essay and try to explain to you what I'm doing and why each of these sentences goes where it does. So let's start by looking at the question. Today, the high sales of popular consumer goods reflect the power of advertising and not the real needs of the society in which they are sold. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So what kind of question is this? This is, of course, an agree or disagree question. So we have to come up with an opinion. I agree, I disagree, or I somewhat agree, somewhat disagree. What about the topic? Well, it's clearly a society question, isn't it? Let's look for some keywords, though, that can give us more information about it. So for me, the phrase popular consumer goods and advertising and the real needs of society, or the society in which they're sold. These are the important things. So what exactly does this question mean? Well, we're looking at why some items sell very highly, why they have a high sales volume. And in this case, that would be popular consumer goods. So I guess like gadgets, technology, an iPhone, for example, or maybe Nike trainers, compared to the real needs of society. So when I read this, I think about food, medicine, textbooks for students, clothing, and so on. So why is it that we have certain products like an iPhone or a pair of Nike trainers that sells millions and millions and millions and makes its company super wealthy compared to some perhaps more important products that don't sell so well? And here I think that relates to the word advertising. I think it's the power of advertising that has that influence. So this is kind of what the question is saying, and it asks us, to what extent do you agree or disagree? And I think in this case, I agree. I already kind of said that, but yeah, I agree with this. So I need to write an answer to this. So I've already analyzed the question. Because I'm talking to you, it takes a little longer, but in the IELTS exam, you can take a couple of minutes just to do that. Maybe 2 minutes to analyze the question. Then you need to plan your answer. So I'm going to write my answer down here, but first of all, let's take a look at what we need to write. So first, we're always going to need to write an introduction. So in this case, our introduction is going to begin with maybe rephrasing the question with a broad statement that sort of tackles the topic. In this case, if I do that, I'm going to be talking about like globalization, materialism. So maybe I need another sentence to refine the scope of my topic. Then I would have another sentence which would state my opinion, although in this case I'm going to try and avoid using personal pronouns and saying I think, even though it says what extent do you agree or disagree, and I'm going to say something like this essay will, because it makes it a little impersonal, a little more formal. That's vaguely my introduction. We don't always need this part, because sometimes just 2 sentences is enough, but I'm thinking I would like to have the first sentence be a really general, big topic. So then we come to what I'm going to call body paragraph 1. I know that's a little confusing because really it's paragraph 2, but it's the first of 2 body paragraphs. So in this case, I want to make my first argument in support of my opinion. So again, I'm going to start with a broad statement, something that's very general. Then I'm going to explain it in the next sentence. Then I'm going to give an example, and I'm going to extend and explain my example. For body paragraph 2, I'll pretty much do the same thing exactly, but I'm going to be extending my argument. I will give another broad statement, I will explain it again a little more, and then I'm going to extend this argument further and give another example to support me. Finally, I'm going to come to my conclusion, and in this case, I will just summarize my whole argument, reaffirming my position. Now, a few things. Your position should be clear here at the top in the introduction, and it should be clear here. Everything in the middle should explore your opinion and support your opinion. It should not change throughout your essay. So you need to plan out your essay like this. I'm typing this down now, but to be honest, this is the essay type I would pretty much always recommend. There's a little flexibility with this section in here and this section here. You can change it about a little according to your question type or your writing style, but it's usually the same. You need to think, of course, before you start writing, what you're actually going to be writing about. So for me, my first paragraph, my broad statement, is going to be pointing out that the most popular items are not necessarily practical items. So this is what I was mentioning up above, that consumer goods are more popular, they sell higher than the real needs of society. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to explain it a little bit, relating how it comes about to the topic of advertising. I'm going to give further evidence of this in paragraph 2, talking about the economy in this case, I think, because it's clear that our economy would look very different if everyday items were outselling iPhones and Nike trainers, because clearly we look at the biggest companies in the world, Apple and Amazon and so on, and these are not selling just everyday goods. These are selling mostly high-end, sort of designer, unnecessary products. So let's begin writing now. I'm going to write this according to my structure here. Because I'm a native speaker, I'm a professional writer, and I'm an IELTS teacher, I'm going to be writing kind of fast. This is going to take me less time than it will take you as a student, but don't worry about that. As I type, I'm going to speed up the recording a little bit, but I'm also going to try to speak over and explain what I'm doing. Okay, so my first sentence is globalization sweeps the world. In the 21st century, people appear to have become more materialistic. This is my rephrasing of the question, sort of a broad statement related to the topic. So my first sentence is a little bigger than this. I've not talked about consumer goods, but that's sort of mentioned as part of materialism, nor have I mentioned advertising, but I'll get to that in the next sentence. So here we go, expensive consumer goods. So I'm refining my topic now quite substantially. The first sentence is a very broad statement about people liking expensive things in the modern era. The next sentence tells us, it brings in this idea of consumer goods. You can see I've said expensive consumer goods rather than popular. I've given these examples of Apple and Nike because I think I will come back to them in the next paragraphs and talk about them. They're sold in all corners of the globe, so it's just a more interesting way than saying around the world. And for many people, they are must-have items. Must-have, this can be used as an adjective, meaning everybody wants it. So next, I'm going to get into the argument part, setting up the debate. Some people believe that this. Now, some teachers might tell you, don't say some people believe. I think it's okay to say, yeah, there are other ways of expressing this, but I think it's fine. Okay, so I've really paraphrased the question here now. In this case, you can see I've said this referring back to our previous two sentences, is all down to, meaning caused by, and advertising. So you can see now I've incorporated pretty much all parts of this statement up here. So what do I have to do next? I'll give one more short sentence stating my opinion, and that will be to agree. So this essay will argue, I can't type and talk for some reason. This essay will argue in support of that position. When I say that position, basically I'm referring back to the previous sentence. So this is my introduction. You can see it's 65 words, so it's a little longer than necessary. Usually an introduction can be 2 or 3 sentences. I've done 4 because my final 2 sentences are very short. But I mean, if your introduction is like 40 to 60 words, that's fine. I think mine's a little long, but it's quite complex and it's an example of an advanced writing style. So next I move into the body paragraph 1. So I'm going to follow this structure here, starting with a broad statement about these being the popular items that are not necessarily the practical ones. So I'll start with a broad statement. Okay, so here's my first sentence. So I say it should be abundantly clear. Abundantly means very. That the popular consumer goods, so I've repeated that from the question, that dominate markets, that's another way of saying high sales, right? Around the world are not items of objective importance. So this is me paraphrasing the phrase, real needs of the society, but rather ones of purely superficial appeal. Superficial means something that looks beautiful or exciting, but it has no real value, maybe. So what do? This is kind of a broad statement. So my next sentence is going to explain it in more depth. So people need things like food and clothing. Right, so I've expanded my broad statement. Now I'm introducing an example. Take, for example, the iPhone. So I'll then have a sentence or two to talk about my example. Right. So here, what am I saying? There are countless other devices in the market. That means many other phones for sale that can do the same thing as an iPhone, without the jaw-dropping price tag. This means very, very, very expensive. However, in almost every country, people want to own one of these status symbols. Right, so this phrase here, status symbols, means something that makes you look cool or makes you look rich. So you'll notice I've kind of come this far and I'm supporting my position that popular consumer goods are selling better than the real needs of society, or things that fulfill the real needs of society. But I've not actually addressed this part of the question yet, and that would be kind of a big problem, except I'm going to do it in this sentence as the conclusion of these sentences, which are building up to this. The reason is simply that it has been marketed well. Marketed means advertised. And owning one makes a person look successful and wealthy. Oh no. You can see I make a lot of mistakes when I type. These are called typos. So this is my second paragraph, or the first body paragraph, and you can see it loosely conforms to this structure here. Broad statement, explaining example, and extend or explain example. This is, these are extending and explaining my examples. Next, we come to body paragraph 2, another broad statement, pretty much following the same pattern in this case, but this time I'm going to give more explanation first before I give an example. Right, so another broad statement here. What I'm kind of saying is that the opposite of my position is false, because our economies would look different if it was true. So this is kind of an advanced way, harking back to our question of saying if the real needs of society had higher sales than these consumer goods, something would be very different. But obviously this is true, that the high sales of popular consumer goods are higher than the real needs of society. I need to bring advertising in pretty soon though, to keep on topic. So I'm just extending this argument a little bit. Fashionable brands would not be as wealthy as ones making affordable, simple products. Yet it is those items that are carefully advertised on TV, what else can we say, on the internet and at sports events, which captivate people and cause them to make, let's say, unwise purchases or form irrational brand loyalties. So now I've brought advertising in again. I've named 3 types of advertising, and I've essentially said it's these items, the ones that are advertised, which captivate people. So that explains these 2 sentences before, justifies them, and it reaffirms my position from up here that it is advertising rather than necessity that causes this trend. So now I've said that, I'm going to bring in another example. Look at how Apple, overtook Microsoft. Oh, I cannot type today. Or how Nike easily outsells any humble local shoemaker. So these are examples of Microsoft's very basic computers being overtaken by Apple's sleek, carefully designed and very carefully advertised computers. And of course, Nike spends a lot of money in advertising compared to a local shoemaker. Our final paragraph, we can begin with in conclusion. I begin every IELTS essay conclusion with in conclusion because I don't think there's any need to change it. You're not going to have 3 conclusions in one essay, so you're not going to be repeating yourself. It is clear that sales are not dictated. Let's say sales are dictated not by a product's necessity, but rather by its appeal to customers. And this appeal is created through slick advertising campaigns. So my conclusion there at the end basically justifies everything I've said up to this point. It repeats my arguments from the introduction. It harks back to the 2 paragraphs here, and without repeating anything, it simply concisely summarizes my essay. You can find this much more details about this, and you can read this essay at my website. You're going to be going to www.TED-IELTS.com. I'll put the actual exact link to this article in the description down below this video once I have finished writing it and I have uploaded the video, and you'll be able to follow the whole article. It's very, very long, but I think it contains everything you need to know. If you want to get your writing marked by me, then you can go to this website and find the link at the top that says Writing Correction Service, and I can help you to improve your writing score and get you ready for the IELTS exam. But that's enough for me today. I'll say goodbye now, and good luck with your writing practice.